Good morning, Meister Dennis. Thank you so much for making the time to make this lineage possible. And I guess, yeah, since you have gotten me this far, if I have to record by myself, I will. It's 721 pages. So let's see how far we'll go. On page 18, Jin Dao. The second word is a Dao. Again, that's a Dao. Dao means the way, the road. Jin is king. The way, the king's way, or the way of kings. The governing principles of ancient China, a retrospective on the history. The first topic, character building, and the mission. The discourse of Han Fan from the Book of History said, a son of heaven, that refers to the son of the king or the emperor, serves as the parent of the population people, and gains the allegiance of all the people. People will be loyal to him or her. The sages use titles like this to rectify their names. Addressing the ruler as a parent was a testament to his forbearance, benevolence, compassion, love, virtuousness, and courtesy. This constituted the way of the ruler, and this is applicable to parents. You are the father of your child who completely depend on you. So to the extent you have compassion, love, virtuousness, and courtesy, forbearance, and benevolence, then your children will love and be loyal to you as you are to your parents. Similarly, at work, if you manage a group of people, same principles apply. Number 2, when the sages, page 20, handle matters, all roads lead to Rome. Different means would lead to the same end. Whether a country continues to exist or meets its downfall, whether it is peaceful and stable or gets overthrown, the aspirations would always remain same. That is, the government should not forget about benefiting the people. The mindset of the saints and sages is such that the thought of benefiting the people would remain in their minds day and night, and thus their benevolence has far-reaching consequences. Chairman Mao talked about serving the people. Your parents love you and think of how to help you and support you, and this is the way of the king or the queen. Number 3, page 23. Righteousness is the foundation of blessings. And righteousness is to align with the Tao, very much similar to the fortune cookie wisdom we went through already. And you can begin to see all of these begin to repeat. It's the same topic, whether it's from Confucius or from Lao Tzu or from the Buddha. When Buddha talked about the Four Noble Truths, the things that you do can cause you to suffer, it basically says, be righteous and then you will not suffer. Suffering will stop because of reaping and sowing. Righteousness is the foundation of blessings, and auspiciousness is the manifestations of blessings. Good fortune, good luck, happiness. Unrighteousness is the root cause of disasters, and inauspiciousness is the result of lost blessings. In the fortune cookie, wisdom talks about accidents, losing things, getting sick from doing negative things. It's all you can begin to see, and if you compare this to the Bible, they all begin to say the same thing, just by different people. If one's conduct does not follow the Tao, Lao Tzu, Tao Te Ching, then one's speech would not accord with benevolence and righteousness. While King Zhao of the Shang dynasty declared himself the king of heaven, and King Jie of the Xia dynasty was a self-proclaimed son of heaven, they gave themselves wonderful titles. The people continued to curse and scold them even after their dynasty had perished. From this we can see that holding certain positions does not make one noble, and titles are insufficient to make one honorable. The dignity of the ruler is gained through the scholars and lay people's respect for him, and that is considered nobility. His affluence is measured by the people loving him, and that is considered prosperity. Hence, a ruler's nobility rests in bestowing blessings upon the people, and the people would thereby respect him. His prosperity rests in providing the people with wealth, and people would thereby love him. Number 4, page 24. Upon succeeding in their attack of the Yin-Sha dynasty, King Wu of the Zhou dynasty distributed the grains from the Zhuguang granary and allotted the money from the Lu Tai palace to the common people. He honored Bi Gan by repairing his tomb and released Ji Xing from prison. In addition, he did not single out the old ministers from the newcomers, for if they were virtuous and capable, he would approach them. He would not necessarily utilize what was originally present or always employ people close to him. King Wu was calm and composed, as if these things and people were originally his. From this we can see that the sages have truly great and far-reaching aspirations. And there's a book, it's about Abraham Lincoln, a team of rivals, how Lincoln picked people who were against him to work in his government. And similarly, the president picks vice president and secretary of state, people who ran against him or her, him up until now. So there are a lot of footnotes. Page 1 through 17 have a lot of descriptions. Page 26, number 5. No sin is worse than lust and dissoluteness, that which means promiscuity. No misfortune is worse than discontent. Never enough, never good enough. No matter what happens, something is always wrong. And no mistake is worse than insatiable greed. Thus, only affluence bred by contentment can be long-lasting. So it is not how much you have, it is that you are happy with what you have. Number 6, page 28. Now, the dripping water from the eaves can fill a kettle. So when the rain's on the roof and the roof comes down in this gutter, the water from the gutter can fill up a kettle. But the water from the rivers cannot fill up a leaky wine container. This is analogous to the human mind. One should use benevolent virtues as a yardstick for judging and restraining oneself. Eat enough to fill the stomach. Wear enough to ward off the freezing cold, and that would suffice to care for one's physical body. If one does not use virtues as a yardstick for judging and restraining oneself, he would not feel noble even if he possessed the authority of a son of heaven, and he would not feel content even if he possessed all the wealth in the world. One uses virtues as the yardstick for judging and restraining oneself. So O-sensei Morihei Ueshiba in Aikido says when you are fighting with somebody, you are acting as if nobody is there. You are executing your technique perfectly according to the situation, but not against anybody. So similarly, he's mean, he's bad, he calls me a name, he attacks me, he badmouths me, therefore I'm going to do the same. Yeah. But here is saying you restrain yourself according to the Tao by using the virtuous values, and this is how you elevate the society and the family, because darkness cannot drive out darkness. Number 7, page 29. One's eyes are captivated by the 5 colors, one's palate craves delicious food, and one's ears are intoxicated by music, as the 7 apertures, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, mouth, 2 ears, 7, are intertwined in the pursuit of enjoyment. One's innate nature will be impaired, attracted to vices and desires every day. One will exhaust the primordial chi energy of his physical body. Same with excessive sex, excessive copulation, it weakens the body. Human body is limited, but the desire is not. If one is unable to regulate and upkeep his own health, how could he govern a country, or a family, or a group, or a company? Number 8. Genuine beauty means the absence of impairment from top to bottom, interior to exterior, big to small, and far to near. If, just for the sake of pleasing the eye, one profligates profligates, spends a lot of money, and amasses the people's wealth to make himself more affluent, but impoverishes the people, how can this thing be considered beautiful? A ruler running the government would live among his people, and if the people are poor and destitute, how can the ruler enjoy affluence? Number 9, 34. The most harmful matter in the world is none other than the ruler allowing women in the inner court to overdress themselves. Without restraining his visual and auditory cravings, he would exhaust the world's imagination and deplete all the rare objects available. Gold pieces by the thousands would be spent on their headwears, and pearls and jewelries from the four seas would adorn the clothing of the concubines. His desires are like a bottomless pit, but the resources of the people are limited. Using what is limited to satisfy what is bottomless is the reason Emperor Ling of the Han Dynasty lost the support of his people. On top was a ruler who did not restrain his desires, and below him were subordinates who would do the same. The customs of dissoluteness, lustfulness, promiscuity, and extravagance would grow simultaneously, causing the populace, the people, to suffer the consequences. Number 10, page 36. Duke Jin of the state of Qin sent an envoy to the state of Chu. As the king of Chu and the envoy ascended the 9-story tower, the king turned his head and asked him, "Does the state of Qi have a tower like this?" To which the envoy replied, "The ruler of my country has an imperial hall to manage administrative affairs. In front of the hall, there is a flight of steps made of soil that is 3 feet high. The thatched roof is not trimmed, and the oak rafters are devoid of carvings or decoration. Nevertheless, the king still thinks that constructing the imperial hall was too laborious for the people, and those who live inside are leading lives that are too comfortable. How is it likely for the king of my country to have a beautiful tower like this?" Upon hearing this, the king of Chu became ill at ease. He was embarrassed. Number 11, page 38. Sages lived in simple dwellings and esteemed virtues. Their daily attire was always plain and simple, but they put in the greatest efforts to practice benevolence and righteousness. Neither did they injure virtuous conduct to make themselves more honorable, nor did they forego virtues just to make themselves more charming. Their countries did not employ labor for work that was unbeneficial to the people, and the residences of the rulers did not have collections of lavish utensils. Number 12. Confucius said, "With regard to King Yu, I find no flaws to criticize. He had simple eating and drinking habits, and his offerings to the ancestors were abundant and clean. He remained filial to his ancestors to the best of his ability. King Yu's daily attire was plain and made of very rough material, but he always wore a dignified robe when holding a court, audience, or worshipping his ancestors. His palace was small and simple, but he exerted his greatest efforts to repair and renovate ditches and improve irrigation for the public. With regard to King Yu, I find no flaws to criticize." Page 41, number 13. When dealing with an ignorant, stubborn, and unruly person, do not be angry with him or despise him. Guide him patiently. Do not demand perfection from anybody. When you employ a person, develop his strengths and assist him in eliminating his weaknesses. Number 14. A ruler would never lash out his anger at his subordinates and the people who bring harm to them. Similarly, his subordinates and the people would never accumulate grievances and bring him distress. Thus, the accumulation of lasting benefits, the establishment of great contributions, the achievement of good reputation in one's lifetime, and the setting of virtuous examples for the future generations, all these characteristics define the highest level of governing. Number 15, page 44. Some officials are not articulate, but their opinions are valuable. While their words may not be pleasing to hear, their suggestions would nevertheless enable the smooth completion of a task and bring success. How could we not appreciate their forthrightness and be tolerant with them? Some officials are simple and honest, but obtuse when it comes to speaking. Their appearance is not outstanding, but they are wise. How could we not appreciate their simplicity and be tolerant with them? Some officials are willing to take risks for the king and are willing to tolerate slanders for the sake of the country. How could we not appreciate their loyalty and be tolerant with them? Some officials would abide by the Tao and as a result sometimes depart from the public's wishes, and they would implement the law strictly with no regard for personal relations. How could we not appreciate their concern for public interests and be tolerant with them? Some officials are unwilling to deviate from the virtuous guidelines in their minds to please others, or to resign to the circumstances to fit the customs. How could we not appreciate their faithfulness and be tolerant with them? Some officials have lowly status but are able to offer wise suggestions, and without consideration of their humble positions, they are forthright in their proposition regarding government affairs. How could we not appreciate their praiseworthy behavior and be tolerant with them? Some officials are reclusive but would strictly abide by the principles. They are independent in their self-conduct but are slandered by others. How could we not appreciate their bold and highly principled conduct and be tolerant with them? Tolerance in the 7 areas above shows the rationale behind recommending virtuous people to the administration, understanding and accepting the subordinates' opinions. That's why in the zero wait time out of execution framework, one of the foibles is when a person's ego or anger is bigger than their ability, then they are stuck, nowhere to go. People cannot talk to you. When they talk to you, you don't want to listen, and you cannot learn new skills to improve yourself. Then it's finished. It's not a question of money, opportunity. It's a question of they don't want to learn. They know everything, and you cannot help those who don't want to open and advance. Page 47, line 16. As a farmer has insufficient energy to cultivate overly large fields, the fields will be overgrown with the weeds and will not yield any harvest. Without virtues, a ruler can only worry and look in vain for people from afar to come and pledge their allegiance and support. Number 17. Confucius said, when you see people doing virtuous deeds, yearn to emulate their sagely conduct, as if hurrying behind them for fear of trailing behind. When dealing with unvirtuous matters, it is like thrusting your hand into boiling water. You should avoid it at all costs. And this is very similar to the Four Noble Truths. The actions that will lead you to suffering and the actions that will lead you to the cessation of suffering. So don't put your hand in boiling water. It's not good for you. It's like they're all saying the same thing. Page 51, line 18. Mencius said, when Zi Lu heard others pointing out his faults, he was delighted. When King Yu came across excellent opinions, he would humbly receive them, even though he was a king. Emperor Shang was even nobler with regard to doing good deeds. He did not distinguish between others and his own. He was willing to forego his own opinion to accept others' advice and would happily adopt their strengths in his virtuous undertakings. From Shun's humble beginnings, working in farms, firing ceramics in a kiln, and doing fishing until he ascended the throne, he always adopted the strengths of others and followed their footsteps. If we do good deeds by adopting the strengths of others, it is equivalent to performing virtuous deeds with them. Hence, no other virtue of a Junzi. Jun means king, Zi means child. No other son of a king, no other prince, or no other noble person with high character. That's what Junzi means. A gentleman in the modern day Chinese. Between page 1 to 17, they define all these terms, but I didn't want to take the time to go through that. It's greater than performing virtuous deeds with others. 19, page 52. The book of Xiang Xuan said, continuous thunder is a symbol of trembling. At this point, a Junzi, a son of a king, Zi is child, Jun is king, like Jun Dao, the way of the king, should be reverent and fearful, thus cultivating virtues and reflect upon his faults. That's why people say, oh, I'm very confident, I'm very optimistic. That sometimes, so if I'm afraid of making mistakes, I'm humble and kind of almost meek, very respectful, because the ruler or the king are the righteous conducts, the principles, the Tao. That's what guides the way, morality. Number 20 on page 54, Confucius said, Yan Wan is a Junzi who is close to having first insights about things and understanding them clearly. He was thoroughly aware of any unwholesome thoughts and behavior, and with this awareness, he never allowed them to arise again. The first line of Fu hexagram was described as such: if you are lost, but you return with awakening before wandering too far, then you will not encounter huge disasters. Such vigilance brings great auspiciousness. That's why in the Fortune Cookie Wisdom, the Sensing Responding Universe by Lao Tzu, what did he say? He says, when you accumulate these negative activities, your life will deduct from 12 years down to 100 days. And when your karma is so right, then you sickness, accidents, lose things, and then eventually die. And whatever is left over goes to your spouse and your children. Lao Tzu said that, so it's the same thing. But if you discover that I'm making mistakes, I will quickly correct myself, because I think the Buddha said, when you are facing negative karma, be afraid as if a tiger is ready to eat you, as if you are walking on thin ice, as you are right next to the cliff, you are about to fall down. So it's like have the same amount of fear, because Americans say karma is a beach, Number 21, page 55. Having a mental acuity above others cannot be considered truly valuable. Being more knowledgeable and more skillful at rhetoric cannot be considered truly valuable. Being bolder in making decisions cannot be truly considered truly valuable. The most valuable quality of a Junzi is that he is single-minded in doing good and always fears that what he is doing is insufficient. In correcting his mistakes, he is afraid of overlooking careless errors. In my particular case, I'm very concerned because of my habitual patterns, my automatic programming from childhood, hasn't come out from my closest families or friends. When those come out, I'm back to the time when I was 10 years old. So I have to reprogram those. So now you have a chance to catch it with your kids, if this makes any sense to you. But for me, I'm really, really struggling. Like, for example, in corporate America, okay, I go to work, I'm meeting strangers. After 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I can handle that. No problem.
Yeah.
They can do anything they want to do. I'm ready. But when it goes to my childhood, dealing with my mother, people that I know for a long time, the old me comes out, and I have to reprogram those.
Yeah.
Scary. Number 22, page 56. If you know your mistakes but do not correct them, it is called losing your conscience. If you can reflect upon your mistakes and yet you are unwilling to correct them, it is called losing the virtues endowed by heaven. If you lose your conscience and the virtues endowed by heaven, you will be the target for disasters. A Junzi will never allow this to happen. So once again, this is being very selfish, self-care. I'm just looking after number one. I'm looking after myself because I'm not looking for disasters. And people say, oh yeah, karma, this and that. No, Lao Tzu, Junzi, Confucius, Buddha, Jesus, none of them is here to punish us or telling us we are wrong. They're just saying, you reap what you sow. This is all very objective. And once again, if you pay attention, they all say the same thing. Number 23, page 57. The book of I Ching. We talked about this last couple of weeks. If the family conduct is upright, a country will be peaceful and stable, emanating from the family to influence the entire world. Such was the wise laws of the ancient sage kings. Confucius says, cultivate your disposition, training your body, straighten out your family, unite your community, and help heal the world in that sequence. So this is all similar. And in The principle-centered leadership, personal, interpersonal, managerial, organizational, same thing. Number 24, page 58. The establishment of benevolence begins from waiting on parents. The establishment of respectfulness begins from treating elders with deference, respect. The practice of love and respectfulness begins from the family to the state and the country, and finally extends to the entire world. We and our parents, we are one body, one flesh, same physical body, mother, father, and same thing with the siblings. It's one body, one flesh, same origin. And then the idea is, if you cannot love your own hand and your own leg, what can you love? Or somebody who gives you your life, if you cannot love them. The establishment, I'm reading the footnote number 8. The establishment of the way of love and respect begins from one's own family, and the elders when the family and country are transformed by virtues. A harmonious atmosphere will finally influence the entire world. Number 25, page 60. Thus, the foundation of the 5 moral relationships lie in loving one's parents. By loving one's parents, one would respect and revere his ancestors. By respecting and revering his ancestors, one would venerate one's progenitors, ancestors, as well as respect and abide by their rules. By venerating one's progenitors and respecting and abiding by their rules, one could unite his clan according to the relations, be close or distant in the order of seniority, such as Gege and his children. By uniting one's clan according to the aforementioned relations, the ritual of making offerings in the ancestral shrine would be solemn and dignified. When the ritual of making offerings in the ancestral shrine is solemn and dignified, the welfare of the country or the state would be valued. When the welfare of the country or the state is valued, all the officials would be cherished. When all the officials are cherished, punishments would be fair and appropriate. When the punishments are fair and appropriate, the people would be able to live peacefully and work happily. When the people could live peacefully and work happily, there would be adequate financial resources. When financial resources are adequate, the kind wishes of the ruler and the populace could be realized. When the kind wishes of the ruler and the populace are realized, etiquettes and customs would be naturally formed. When etiquettes and customs are naturally formed, then everybody could enjoy stability in their lives. Xin Jing said, "Were the virtues of King Wen not promising enough to continue the ancestors' undertakings? The people always loved him dearly, and nobody despised him." This is what the aforementioned description was about. In Calabria, all the family, all the neighborhood, everybody was there, even though Ima's father had to go to Switzerland to generate the money and the prosperity, but still the tradition is there. They were able to keep up that love of the society, the family, the husband and wife, and the community. 26, page 63. In his memorial to Emperor Wen of the Han Dynasty, Jia Yi said, "The throne of the Xia Dynasty lasted for over 10 generations. The throne of the Yin Dynasty lasted for over 20 generations. The throne of the Zhou Dynasty lasted for 30 generations. While the throne of the Qing Dynasty lasted for 2 generations and met its downfall." Since human nature is not very different, why did the reigns of the Xia, Shang, and Zhou rulers, which went according to the virtues of virtuous Tao, last so long? Whereas the rulers of the Qing dynasty, who violated the Tao, brought the dynasty to abrupt demise. The reason is obvious. The ancient kings aligned their actions with the laws and proprieties to serve as a good role model for the newborn crown prince, with the helper carrying the infant crown prince on his back. Relevant officials showed respectfulness and solemnity as they dressed in neat attire to pray to heaven. When passing a watchtower, the ruler would descend from the royal carriage to walk as a show of courtliness. When he walked by the ancestral shrine, he would respectfully take small, brisk steps. This is the way of the filial son. When the crown prince was an infant, he had already started receiving education. The Dalai Lama was taken from his parents when he was 2 years old to raise by the monks. So this education starts from very young age. And the Buddha and monk Jin Kong said, even when the baby is in utero, still in pregnancy, the mother thinking good thoughts, reading poetry, listening to holy teachings, and that will begin the education of the child. And from birth to 1 year old, the size of the brain doubles in size. By the time they are 5 years old, the brain of a child is 75% of the size of the brain of an adult. By then, the conflict management, what they like, what they don't like, their mannerism, the faces they make, all set. It's almost impossible to change. You have to work really, really hard. You can change it, but very few people are even interested. As you said, it's a niche, but nobody is interested. So it's a reference book, zero wait time. Whoever has whatever issues, just point them to the section. That's why I added a table of figures. 27, page 65. The three kings, King Yu of the Xia dynasty, King Tan of the Xiang dynasty, and King Wen of the Zhou dynasty, educated their princes with propriety and music as a compulsory subjects. Music served to cultivate one's mind and the inner being, whereas propriety served to establish respectfulness and to rectify the external elements, namely one's speech and conduct. The cultivation through propriety and music converges in the human mind and is manifested in one's external behavior. 28, page 68. Senior Minister Xi Kui remonstrated with Duke Zhuang of the state of Wei by saying, I heard that if one truly loves his child, one should educate him or her about righteousness so that he will not go astray. Arrogance, extravagance, indulgence in desires, and slackening will lead one astray. The cause of these four types of evil behavior comes from spoiling the child and providing him with an overly extravagant lifestyle. In the book Boundaries, people who are serial killers, either they were completely spoiled with no boundaries, or they were severely beaten or restrained and traumatized with boundary issues. And in the Zero Wait Time Out of Execution, in the Life Glacier section 3.6.2, boundaries, really has a lot to say there. And all of these boundaries, how you set the boundaries and how you respond to boundaries, it goes back to what Dr. Covey said in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Be proactive. That's where Viktor Frankl in the concentration camp realized he could choose his own response to that situation. To visualize he will be released from the concentration camp and doing teachings. So he changed his boundaries in his own mind. And we can do the same thing. But in my case, it takes a lot of reprogramming at this point in my life, but I'm doing it. Page 70, number 29. When Prince Kagan was seriously ill, he summoned his son and advised him, young as you are, you know not all the right ways to handle matters. Being a ruler at this young age, if you only know how to have fun, but remain ignorant about sufferings, you are bound to commit many mistakes because of your arrogance and profligacy, spending too much money. When receiving the ministers, you must follow the protocols. If they are aged but do not hold ministerial positions, they should still receive a reciprocal bow from you. Be respectful towards your elder siblings and love and care for your younger siblings. When your sibling misbehaves, approach him to offer advice. If he does not listen, persuade him in tears. If he does not change upon such guidance, report it to his mother. If he still does not change, write a memorial to the Son of Heaven, the King, to seize the land of his state, rather than allowing him to face misfortunes, but remain doted, remain in favor. It is better for him to be safe but poor. Of course, we are talking about serious wrongdoing here. For minor mistakes, try to cover them up for him. Oh dear son, be circumspect in self-cultivation, be loyal and sincere in your service at the imperial court. Be filial and respectful when waiting upon the Queen Dowager, your mother, who will be the widow because the king is dying, who is talking now. Abide by the instructions of the Queen Dowager at home and follow the teachings of your uncle King Pei, When you are away from home, never let your mind slacken, and that is how you comfort your soul. And he says, if your brother is not doing the right thing, and you have talked to him, you have cried, you went to the mother, finally you go to the king to take away his money, which reminds me, Hitler was a painter, he wasn't successful. Too bad, if he was successful, he would remain the painter, rather than doing what the heck, all that happened. It's just amazing. Horrific trauma. Number 30, page 73. On an island, both ospreys perch on a branch and sing to each other, the birds, making the harmonious sound of guan guan. Only a kind and demure lady would be the ideal spouse of a Junzi. If you are the crown prince, you're gonna marry, your wife will be the queen. She will be the queen of the family. She will be the queen of the clan, and she can, as Ima has, revive and all the cooking, just like a whole dynasty is born again. Number 9, footnote, page 73. The husband and wife relationship is the beginning of all moral relationships. Anybody and everybody is tied, begin with husband and wife. Grandfather, grandmother, nephew, niece, all of it begins with the man and the woman. One can influence the country and do likewise. That was what King Wen was thinking when he found a virtuous woman to assist him in governing the country. Number 31, page 75. The fine horse from Wuban, if and when handled by mediocre horsemen, would behave like inferior horses. On the other hand, if the same horses were to be handled by Bo Li, they would behave like superb horses. Thus, the problem did not lie in the horses. Educating and transforming the people follows the same principle. The people who met sage kings like King Yu and King Tan would become good people. And if they met despots like King Jia and King Xia dynasty and King Zhao of the Shan dynasty, they would become hostile, stubborn, and ignorant. The different results were the consequences of different approaches of governing. Hence, a skilled ruler would not put the blame on his people. Rather, he would reflect upon his mistakes. He would not reprimand his subordinates. Instead, he would have self-expectations. Lao Tzu says, when there are many laws, people become cunning. When there are too many rules, people are going to find a way to find the loopholes. And if you punish people a lot, people become feisty and bellicose, warlike, because they respond. Rather than dealing with the issue of ignorance and needing for education, all of these other things create new negative traits according to the Tao. And Lao Tzu said all kinds of things. Number 32 in page 76. If a ruler is virtuous, his officials will also be virtuous. If the officials are virtuous, and the people will also be virtuous. If the people are virtuous, it is the fault of the government officials. If the government officials are unvirtuous, it is the fault of the ruler. Alas, do guard against this. Do guard against this. He's talking to the kings now. And this is against the father, to the wife, to the children, and to the family clan. And as your father said, fish rots from the head, stinks from the head. And they were talking about telling teenagers how they should not go out and have free sex. Let's remember, it goes from the creations from the head to the heart to your genitals, not the other way. Those who love others will be loved, and those who detest others will also be detested. We should be aware that if we cultivate well, we will earn the support of the public. There's a saying that goes, one can understand the world without leaving his room. It describes knowing how to reflect upon one's behavior and thereby cultivating one's conduct. And that's very difficult. Page 79, number 34. In their self-cultivation and in managing people, wise kings from the ancient times rectified their minds and stayed on the right path. When they could stay on the right path, everything they did would be carried out appropriately. If they lost track of it, nothing they did would be appropriate. If they could remain on the right path and handle all matters appropriately, they could garner more than enough energy to govern the country. Thus, when the time was not ripe, they would safeguard themselves, abide by the right path, and continuously remain moderate and amicable. When the time was ripe, they would provide benefits to the entire country so that all the people, matters, and things could carry out their respective functions. If the rulers lost track of the right path and handled all matters inappropriately, they could not even afford to support their spouse or provide education for their children. Hence, rulers would deviate from the right path and met with difficult times, reassure themselves, and put all the blames on others. This would ultimately invite misfortunes upon themselves. When conditions were favorable, they would indulge in their desires, luxuriate endlessly, and thereby bring misfortune to the whole country. Toynbee, Toynbee, is a historian, and he said the ancient Chinese cultures would be very helpful in the modern world. Dr. Toynbee. Number 35, page 81. By referring to the law of nature, cultivating one's mind, sorting out one's preferences and regulating one's emotions by way of governing is well prepared. By referring to the law of nature, one will know full well about the causes and development of good or bad fortune, and therefore will take or cease actions reasonably. By cultivating the mind, one will not become happy or angry erratically, and therefore will not give out rewards or punishments unjustly. So this is all training. This is decades and years of training, which I don't have. I mean, I have some extent, but fundamentally I don't have. By sorting out one's likes and dislikes, one will not crave for useless things, and therefore one's good nature will not be put in harm's way. By regulating one's emotions, desires can be restrained, and when desires are restrained, it will be possible to preserve one's innate nature and remain content. Do not seek to follow these four postulations through external means or rely on others for help. We merely need to reflect upon ourselves by using the correct principles. Page 82. And this is why I said to my parents, I said, look, even though we are not young kids anymore, if life continues, this knowledge is helpful. Doesn't matter where you go, if you go somewhere. So, and the Chinese people have a saying, you live all your life and you learn all your life. The book said, number 36, page 84, by evaluating your good and evil and regulating your emotions, the way of a leader is thereby complete. Upon sorting out one's feelings and emotions, one could manifest one's innate nature and further understand and manifest the innate nature of all beings and assist heaven and earth in the nurturing of all things. To sort out one's emotions, one must distinguish his strengths and try to make up for his inadequacies. Generally speaking, intelligent and perceptive people should refrain from being overcritical, while shallow people should eschew or ignore ignorance. Brave and strong people should avoid using excessive violence, while benevolent, loving, gentle, and kind people should be wary of indecisiveness. Calm, quiet people who are very moderate in their actions should prevent missed opportunities, and magnanimous people should be vigilant against negligence. Magnanimous is generous and very forgiving. One must carefully distinguish the areas in which he has to take heed and align himself with righteous principles. In this way, he could be moderate and discreet in character, while cunning, hypocritical flatterers would not dare to collude with one another in the hope of promotion. In my particular case, I listened to teachings 24/7 the last number of decades, and I checked with Auntie Adora. We are very, very different, and she's very analytical about many things. So I bounce things off of her sometimes, not always. Number 37. I like to do it all the time, but she's not interested in all the areas. Number 37, page 86. Confucius said, a ruler can be likened to a container, and his people can be likened to water. If the container has a squarish shape, the water it holds will appear squarish. If the container is round, the water will assume a round shape. Is there anything that the leader likes, but the common people will not follow in his footsteps? Number 38, page 88. If a leader favors wood, his subordinates would destroy the forest. If a leader craves for fish, his subordinates would drain the water in the valley. If a leader wants to use oars, his subordinates would present him with a boat. If a leader's words are as refined as a silk thread, his subordinates' words are like a coarser silk string. When a leader spends a part of his effort to do good deeds, his subordinates would put in twice as much effort to gain praises. When the ruler's extravagance decreases by 3 parts, his subordinates' extravagance would have corresponding threefold reduction. The importance of role modeling and the importance of leadership. Number 39, page 90. In the affairs of governance, the ancient kings would rank worthy people according to their virtues, so that the wise and capable would be respected. Regardless of whether they were farmers, craftsmen, or traders, anyone who was virtuous and capable could be selected, recommended, and given high noble ranks and handsome salaries, and would be allowed to manage governmental affairs. Rewards are not given simply because they were wise and capable. Instead, it was because their services could well help the ruler achieve greatness in his undertakings. Hence, virtuous conduct should be used to gauge rankings, while official positions should be given to reflect the responsibility to serve the country. One would receive rewards based on political achievements, and he would receive salaries based on his contributions. As a result, no official would enjoy perpetual noble status, and no commoner would suffer lifelong lowly status. Anybody with virtues would be selected and promoted, and those who were immoral would be deposed. Promoting people fairly, rather than using one's personal grudges to dismiss others, would enable virtuous candidates to serve in the government. With the assistance of virtuous and talented people, the ruler would have inexhaustible strategies at his disposal. His physical body would not get tired. He could establish his reputation by enjoying success in his undertakings. Jack Welch says he glows from the success of his people. When virtues are manifested, evil and malice will not arise. Thus, it is said that respecting virtuous and capable people is the foundation of governing. And Jack Welch said, GE, ex-CEO of GE, who is passed away, he said it is ridiculous to say he accomplished anything because people did everything. He just, worked with the people. Number 40, page 93. There's a saying that goes, there may be talented people in the world who can govern a country well, but there will never be a legal system detached from human factors that can govern a country well. If a government can depend only on laws to do well, then Emperors Yao and Shang didn't need the assistance of Jing and Shi, and the kings of the Shen and Zhao dynasties would attach little importance to Yi Yin and Liu Xian's assistance. So it's very important to have good people. All the systems can go bad. Doesn't matter how good it is if the people are corrupt. 41, page 94. In all governing principles, nothing is better than relying on wisdom. To rely on wisdom, nothing is better than depending on virtuous and capable men. This can be likened to identifying good horses by Bo Li or selecting beautiful jade by Yi Dan, in which case there will be no errors. Page 42. Those who cross the river would depend on a boat. Those who travel afar would depend on good horses. A successful hegemon or ruler would depend on his wise and capable ministers. If the birds, 43, page 96, if the birds, beasts, and fishes are aware that they could borrow external forces, what's more, a country's leader who has over 10,000 military vehicles. However, if he does not borrow the strength of the country's heroes and wise men and gather them by his side, how could people not bemoan his ignorance? Hence, an insightful person leading another insightful person could reach far and ascend high until they reach heaven. An insightful person leading a blind person could bring the latter home. But if two blind persons were to support each other, they will be considered lucky if they do not bump into the walls of trees or fall into wells or traps. the Buddha in the Kshitigarbha Bodhisattva Sutra, he says, the people who refuse to learn, they are like blind people standing in a dark place. And they become darker and darker, they become more and more lost. No way out. 44. So the boundaries for helping out people, if people don't want help themselves, there's nothing you can do. Nothing you can do.
Yeah.
You can give them something to eat, that's fine. But that only allows them to not take responsibility for themselves. And that's the
Yeah.
basic argument between the Republicans and Democrats. Democrats said we should help. I don't really know. At a high level, Republicans are saying, well, let them figure it out. It's kind of
Yeah.
like that. I'm not into politics, so I don't really know. That's what I hear. Page 40, item 44, page 98. If a leader knows of wise people but does not recommend and employ them, this is perilous. If he hears about virtuous people but does not seek their advice, this is perilous. If he hears about capable people but does not employ their services, this is perilous. If he gets close to the virtuous but has little faith in them, this is perilous. If people engage in a common undertaking but betray one another, this is perilous. So to trust in competence and trust in goodness and trust in the principles. Number 45. Shunzi said, page 100, a ruler who speaks publicly about not using virtuous and capable men is not as disastrous as one who fails to use these men wholeheartedly. He may say he values these men, but in reality rejects their help, and with such incongruence between words and actions, how can he expect the virtuous to stay and the unvirtuous to leave? Isn't that difficult? This statement was well said indeed. Number 46, page 102. A ruler who could govern an empire successfully would learn from virtuous people as if they were his teachers. A ruler who could govern a kingdom would befriend virtuous people, and they could thereby engage in mutual learning. A ruler who brought demise to his country would slight others as if they were his servants. 47, page 103. A ruler who treats his ministers as his teacher can be considered an emperor, whereas a ruler who treats his minister as a guest can be considered a hegemon. King Wu of the Zhou dynasty treated Jiang Taigong as his teacher, while Duke Huang of the state of Qi treated Guangzong like his father. So know people who are really, truly capable and virtuous and follow their advice. In the principle-centered leadership approach, zero wait time, out of execution, at the very beginning, the foundational principles, it defines principle-centered leadership. In my opinion, that is a more reliable guideline if you can understand it and follow that than to follow people. Because great companies such as GE and Netflix, they say, well, you stay here if your manager really doesn't want you to leave. But then still, your manager has to like you, so there may be personal preference, there may be bias. So it's not 100% objective. It's not possible to be 100% objective, but the compass always tells you the north. It's a mechanical device. So the principles, like the gravity, always tell you the truth. So if you can find a guiding principle, and if you can correctly read it, it is actually a principle. You know how to use it, and you can make a distinction between real principles and fake principles. Then those are actually very reliable. 48. A country is well governed and families are peaceful because they receive the help of virtuous and capable men and women. A country is in ruin and meets its downfall because it loses the service of virtuous and capable people. Thus, a wise ruler and their virtuous ministers will always tolerate inconveniences just to ensure that the talents of the virtuous and capable people are well employed and their aspirations are fully utilized. When these books were written, all the kings, I guess, were men, but nowadays the presidents of countries are women. Angela Merkel, the leader. 49, page 105. A virtuous and capable person in a high position will attract people with similar virtues to serve at the imperial court. A virtuous and capable person in lower position will hope for people with similar virtues to be duly employed. Hence, when King Chen Tang employed Yi Yin, the unvirtuous left, and many virtuous and capable people came to assist him. Such is the law of attraction. Duke Jiang, item number 50, page 107. We'll stop in about 5 minutes, so make 1 hour. Duke Jiang of the state of Zheng told Zi Chen, while drinking, no music is to be played, and no bells and drums are to be struck. It is my responsibility to see that this is done. If the country has no income, the imperial government is not well administered, and established diplomatic relationships cannot deliver my wishes, then it is your responsibility. When Zichang governed the state of Zheng, there were no robbers or thieves in the country, and there were no hungry men on the roads. Confucius said, for a man who loves music as much as Duke Jiang could in fact attend court sessions with the bell and the drum, one who is adept at employing virtuous and capable people is able to enjoy peace, and good reputation is then naturally attached to him. There will be fewer issues, but the achievements are plenty. The country will be well governed, and the ruler will feel at ease in life. 51. Page 109. Speech that is most truthful is not pleasing to the ear, and it is considered as insubordination. Could an unwise ruler accept such advice? For what pleases a wise ruler, an unworthy ruler would denounce. If a person wishes to see a tree grow luxuriantly, but he despises people who water it regularly, and furthermore severs its roots every day, surely the tree will not be able to survive. Averting truthful advice is the most severe act of self-destruction. When your ego is greater than your ability, it's the most severe act of self-destruction. They all say the same thing everywhere. Okay, a few more. Number 52 on page 112. The wise ruler listens to the suggestions of his subordinates. If a strategy can be usefully employed but the idea is proposed by a person of lower status, the ruler should not be ashamed to implement it. If the subordinates' opinions are feasible, they are not required to be eloquent. The perspective of an unworthy ruler is contrary to this. He trusts and favors people who are close to him. They may be treacherous lawbreakers, but he is blind to their misconduct. Further, he estranges himself from those with lowly status and remains oblivious to their faithful, sincere, and intelligent proposals. When a subordinate tries to engage in remonstration, the ruler would grill him until he is lost for words. For those who are forthright with their persuasion, he would ascribe offenses to them and punish them. If the unworthy ruler thought he could glorify his name and pacify all the people by doing so, this is like stuffing one's ears to discern the quality of the sounds heard, or blindfolding oneself to see colors. This is too far removed from perceptiveness. The book From Good to Great says a great leader such as Abraham Lincoln, they are very humble and they have a compelling vision for the future. Abraham Lincoln, one night he was during the war, the messenger boy came and gave him a message, and then when the messenger boy returned to Abraham Lincoln, and Abraham Lincoln said, "What did the Minister of War say when he read my note?" And the messenger boy says, "No, that's it for the evening." And the messenger boy didn't want to tell him. Then Abraham Lincoln said, "No, tell me what did my Minister of War say about my idea?" And then the messenger boy, very, the low voice said, "Well, he said those are the ideas of a fool." And Abraham Lincoln said, "Okay, I want to know why, right?" And this is how you work with highly intelligent people, but you have to tolerate their mannerism, their speech, which they just talked about here.
Yeah.
Okay, one more. Then 53, page 114. A wise ruler can humbly receive remonstrations from his subordinates with a broad mind, respect, and acknowledge officials who are brave enough to remonstrate with him, so that the channels for loyal and forthright remonstrations are readily available, and refrain from punishing the subordinates for their impetuous speeches, like Abraham Lincoln did. Team of Rivals was the name of the book they wrote about Abraham Lincoln. In this way, all officials can comfortably hold their positions at the imperial court, thereby exerting their efforts to be loyal, honest, and contribute intelligent strategies without being worried of future troubles. As a result, the imperial court will have no flatterers, and the ruler will not commit mistakes caused by losing track of the righteous path. So we are stopping right now. We'll begin with number 54 next time. Anything you'd like to add, Meister Dennis?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.